So I'm a creative technologist, and I spend a lot of time thinking about how humans interact with technology. And over the past few years, I've started to notice a trend that we're kind of moving into a new era. And basically what's happening is we're shifting from tech-focused interactions to tech-enabled interactions. And this is really going to change how we think about what it means when technology is interactive. To illustrate this point, I first want to talk about cinema. 3D cinema is something that every decade or two, Hollywood convinces us to wear sunglasses at night, but it never really sticks. And I think the reason for that is because the tech doesn't really add anything to the story or the experience. It's just kind of there, and it's a novelty, and it kind of fades away. But computer-generated imagery, CGI, is something that has stuck around because it enables greater cinematic immersion and greater creative expression. At first it was something of a novelty, but now it's often used in ways that we don't even notice. Now, I'm sure we've all seen installations like this, and this is supposedly the latest and greatest, but if you break it down, it's not a whole lot different from a mouse and a screen. We've just replaced the mouse with our hand. And this is an example of a tech-focused interaction where this collaborative drawing robot is a very different beast indeed. This is something that co-creates a piece of artwork with a human artist. And this analog piece of artwork, if you hung it on the wall, you might never know that a robot or a machine intelligence participated in its creation. And I think that's what I'm getting at, that up until now, most of what we think of as interactive involves some type of glowing rectangle. And when you take that away, you have what's called a headless system, something that lacks a classical graphical user interface. And these blocks, the constellation blocks, are a great example of that. You know, they're pretty simple devices. When they see a light, they show a light. They're basically digital dominoes. The technology itself isn't super impressive, but what is impressive is what happens when you give large numbers of these blocks to a group of people. What happens is we start interacting with them and with each other in a physical space as opposed to with each other through a screen. Now, the impact of this is wide-ranging. It's everything from reconnecting ourselves with our sense of play to helping to illustrate abstract concepts in a really tactile way. But it kind of forces us to ask ourselves, are we controlling this technology, or is it simply there reacting to the environment that it exists in? You know, things like this kind of create new behaviors. We aren't pointing and clicking, we're manipulating a physical surface. And when you kind of think about that, these emergent behaviors are already happening with things we probably have in our pockets right now, you know? And like anything, they can be used to create things that are beautiful, and they can also be used to create things that are maybe not so beautiful. And the next couple examples kind of get into that other side of this. The Follower is a social experiment app that is essentially like an Uber for stalkers, essentially. It'll share your location with an anonymous stranger who then physically follows you around. And what I love about this app is it really makes us kind of think about our modern social media culture. I mean, some of the people that I'm sharing the stage with tonight have tens of thousands of virtual followers, but I'm sure that they don't want any of us following them home after the show. But you know, it also makes us think, is digital privacy any less weird than physical surveillance? The transparency grenade is an art object that sucks up all the wireless communications in range of it and then rebroadcasts them out unsecured and publicly. And you know, it makes you think, how would you behave differently if you knew that every text and email you sent tonight was being watched? How would you feel if I said that maybe I set one of these off earlier tonight during the show? And you know, as Donald Rumsfeld infamously said, the unknown unknowns are often the most important problems that we're going to face. And I think it's worth thinking about that a little bit, because as these new technologies develop and these new interfaces exist, they're going to create new behaviors. And whether or not we choose to purchase these devices ourselves, at some point we're not really going to have a choice as to whether or not we interact with these invisible systems. And when you think about it that way, you know, there's both the good and the bad, but I consider myself an optimist. And I think that ultimately, when you take away the screen, when you take away the glowing rectangle, we're going to create technology that's going to reconnect us to our physicality and each other, and we're not going to be interrupted by holding up a screen in front of our faces. But for those of you that do want to look at a glowing rectangle right now, you can find me on the socials at Illa, and Don't worry, I didn't actually set off a privacy grenade tonight. Probably.